Solutions, Natasha Clarke, Deputy Minister of Cybersecurity and Digital Solutions, and they are here to provide you an update on the impact of the global breach of the MOVEit file transfer system here in Nova Scotia. To get started, we'll go to Minister LeBlanc with some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Kalela. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm here today to provide you an update on the recent global cybersecurity breach that has impacted Nova Scotia. On Sunday, June 4th, I announced that an issue with a file transfer service called MOVEit had created a critical vulnerability that put the personal information of some Nova Scotians at risk. At that time, our teams were manually going through all the files that were accessed during the breach to identify what information was stolen and who it belongs to. This work is still ongoing. However, we are now able to provide details about the extent of the impact. Before I continue, I cannot stress enough that the details we're sharing with you today could change. This is an evolving situation. If new information and details emerge, we will hold another update and we'll post details on our privacy breach website at novascotia.ca/privacy-breach. The province has determined that many employees of Nova Scotia Health, the IWK Health Centre, and the public service have had personal information stolen. Past employees of Nova Scotia Health and the public service have also been impacted. Our investigation is still confirming the exact number of employees affected, but we estimate that this could be as many as 100,000 people. As I said earlier, this number could change. The investigation remains underway, so there is a potential for this number to go up or go down. The type of data that was stolen is social insurance numbers, addresses, and banking information. This type of information could be accessed through MOVEit because the service is used to transfer employee payroll information. I'm sharing this news because I want to be transparent. I want to continue giving Nova Scotians this important information as soon as possible. I know this is an alarming situation, but rest assured, we are working hard to resolve this quickly and efficiently. Over the coming days and weeks, we will be reaching out directly to identify Nova Scotians to let them know that their personal information has been stolen. To support these individuals, the province of Nova Scotia will be offering free credit monitoring and fraud protection services. More details will be provided when we connect with those affected directly. In the meantime, I encourage civil servants, Nova Scotia Health staff, the IWK staff, as well as Nova Scotians in general to monitor their banking information closely. I also recommend reaching out to your banking institution proactively to flag the risk. I want to remind all Nova Scotians to be on guard against scammers who will try to take advantage of this breach. If a person reaches out to you by phone, by text, by email, make sure you know who they are and why they are asking you for your personal information. When the province begins reaching out to notify people impacted by the breach, we will not ask you for your health card number, your social insurance number, your banking information, or any other personal information or any money. Please be safe and don't give anyone your personal information or money. And please continue to check our privacy website for updates at novascotia.ca/privacy-breach. Again, I know this has been a very stressful time for many Nova Scotians, and this cybersecurity breach creates additional anxiety. I want to reassure everyone that our teams of internal experts and our engaged cybersecurity experts as well are working tirelessly to resolve this issue. Thank you very much, and we will now take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. We are going to follow our one question, one follow-up format. So I'll call on you when it's your turn. To start, we have Jean Laroche with CBC.
Thank you very much, Kalela. Minister, so it's 100,000, I guess, current and past government employees. What about the public? Any public information? Because as you know, a lot of people would deal through the government and would provide banking information, that sort of thing.
So thanks for the question, Jean. So as once we identified late Saturday night that yes, that there was a breach of information staff immediately began to go through the files that were impacted to understand the number of Nova Scotians impacted and the severity and the extent of this breach. We started with the highest sensitivity of information, and that includes the broad breadth of the information that's most important to Nova Scotians. So we're here to provide the update of our estimate of 100,000 Nova Scotians being impacted. As I indicated, that number could go up, could go down. But today is about being transparent, to continue transparent with Nova Scotians, providing additional information, understanding that, no, we do not have all the answers at this time, but it is our commitment to provide Nova Scotians updates on a regular basis.
Okay. First off, can everybody mute themselves, because some of that is bleeding through? Minister, you didn't really answer my question in terms of the public. Any public information get out there? You can say as far as we know, but I need to know, is it just current and former government employees?
So at this time, I'm able to confirm the extent of our investigation today has brought us forward to the point today that we're able to announce what we're announcing at this time. So once more information is made available, Jean will certainly be able to share more with you.
Thank you, Jean. Moving along, we are going to Keith Doucette with the Canadian Press.
Yes, hello, Minister. I wonder if you could confirm that it was the Clarke group that is behind this ransomware attack, and are you in fact negotiating at this point with them as a government entity?
So what I'd say is that our primary focus on this event was to, after identifying the breach, was to contain it, to follow the best practices, and to immediately get to work to understand who was impacted and the extent of this breach. I'm not going to comment on interactions with criminals, because that's what they are. But what I'd say is that as we're moving forward with this file, I want to reassure Nova Scotians that this breach is top priority for our government, and we're moving as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I'm not sure if Deputy Clarke, you have anything further to add there.
Yeah, I would just add that at this point in time, we are not negotiating. I would agree with the minister's comment. These are criminals. Our priority and our focus has been on understanding, first containing the attack, the vulnerability, and then now the focus is on understanding the impact of the data that has been stolen. And we have not been asked for any ransom.
All right. Well, if that's the case, I'm just wondering how soon can you start to contact people who've been affected? I think the minister mentioned it'll take a while to do it, but how quickly can you do it? Given the nature of the information that was stolen, it seemed incumbent upon you to get a hold of people as quickly as you can.
So I was cutting out a little bit on my end, Keith, but I believe that the premise of the question is on the timeline of communication. Is that correct?
Yes, contacting people who've been affected. I mean, it's essential that we get to them as quickly as possible. So what are you doing to do that?
Yeah, so as quickly as possible, that is our objective. So what I'd say is over the coming days and weeks, we will be doing so. For some individuals, it'll be much easier to contact them. Understanding that perhaps some of their contact information, if we're talking about former employees, their contact information may have changed since then. But we want to reassure Nova Scotians that, again, we will be doing so as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But when we're talking 100,000 Nova Scotians, that is going to be a challenge. But again, it's going to be individually contacting these impacted. And again, I echo what I noted in my opening remarks, that when government contacts them to identify that they've been impacted by this breach, we will not be soliciting any personal information or asking for money.
Thank you. Next, we have Brian Flynn with All Nova Scotia.
Thanks, Kalila. If the province has not been contacted with a demand for ransom, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because the criminals who did this must have a motivation. If their motivation isn't to extort money out of the government, presumably their motivation could be to profit from stealing the identities of these people and going into their banks.
Yeah, so I certainly don't want to speak for or I guess hypothesize or speculate the motivation of criminals. What I noted on Sunday is that cybercrime is a reality living in today's day and age, living in a digital world. These criminals look for vulnerabilities. They look at opportunities to penetrate systems. This is their line of work, and to target businesses, levels of government, individuals. Nobody is immune from the risk or the threats of cybersecurity. We are all impacted. And if we believe so otherwise, we're being misled. So I think it's important for Nova Scotians to recognize that we all have a role. It is a priority for our government, but I also echo that if it's a minor thing such as updating your iPhone or updating your laptop, these updates are important. Sometimes they include security updates to software. So nobody's immune from this. And as I noted previously, cybersecurity and cyber threats are the world's second largest threat, only after climate change.
And do you have a follow-up, Ryan?
Sure, I do. So, Minister, is anyone helping the province right now with this work of identifying the scope of the breach, who has been breached? Have you brought in anyone from the outside? And if so, who's going to pay for that ultimately? Will it be the service provider?
So we engage regularly with external experts on various files to support and the internal expertise that we have at the Department of Cybersecurity and Digital Solutions. I got to say, we have a high level of professionalism and dedication and knowledge and expertise within the department. And I want to take this opportunity to thank them for their tremendous hard work, especially over the last number of days here, but every day to support the work of government, to support all departments in achieving and moving forward with our mandate. Perhaps I'll pass it over to Deputy Clarke to speak into a little bit more detail with respect to the external expertise.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for the question. As the Minister has indicated, cybersecurity is a global concern. It's not just a concern and priority here in Nova Scotia. And because this is quite, it's organized, it's a business now, we have to collaborate across levels of government with private and public sector academia in order to have a united front. So we do partner with private sector experts. We have a retainer with a large firm that we leverage on a as needed basis, which we did leverage. They bring global expertise that are able to support us 24 hours a day. We also partner extensively with the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, which they're able to bring experts from their network as well as many others that I won't get into naming. So we certainly have an excellent team here at the CSDS. I'm very proud of them, as the Minister's commented on, but we also ensure that we are leveraging as many relationships and networks as we have, whether that be with private sector or, as I say, other public sector partners.
Thank you, Deputy. Moving along, we have Frank Campbell with the Chronicle Herald.
Hello, Minister. When you reach out and contact people individually, what sort of advice will you be giving them? And is it different than the advice that you just offered to the entire public?
Thank you, Frank. So certainly as our investigation continues, as our work continues to identify all impacted Nova Scotians, to understand the full extent and the severity of the breach, we'll certainly take in consideration those details. But the information that will be shared is as I noted earlier, the free fraud protection and credit protection services that we'll be providing to those impacted. And of course, directing everyone, whether it be those impacted or Nova Scotians in general, to the website that we immediately stood up, and that's novascotia.ca/privacy-breach.
Do you have a follow-up question, Frank?
I do. So you talk about 100,000 people, so that's 1 in 10 Nova Scotians. Is that surely then must extend beyond government employees and former government employees?
So what our investigation has confirmed to us today, and that's what led us to announce today's news, was that 100,000 people, 100,000 Nova Scotians, being employees or current or past employees of Nova Scotia Health, the IWK, as well as the provincial civil service, have been impacted. We still have more work to do, as I noted, and as that work unfolds, that number could go up or it could go down. But today's announcement is to continue our commitment to being transparent with Nova Scotians, and answering the questions that you have, answering the questions that Nova Scotians may have, but also recognizing that we do not have all the answers today, but it is important that we are upfront with Nova Scotians and providing as much information as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Tim Bousquet with the Halifax Examiner.
Hi, good afternoon. And Minister, I have a couple questions about the sequence of events. If I understood you right on Sunday, you said that Ipswich notified the province of a potential problem, and you took the MOVEit system offline, and then they sent you a patch, which you implemented and then put the system back online, and only later found out that the system had been compromised with the patch. Is how I understood it. So my question is, at what point was the Nova Scotia info, the payroll info, stolen? Was it before or after that patch? And what's the liability for Ipswich here?
So as I noted on Sunday afternoon, we were notified on June 1st of this vulnerability. We immediately took the system down. We implemented that critical updates that happen regularly on different programs and services, I'd say. And then at that time, the program was brought back online. It's a program that supports a number of departments and government services and programs and facilitates the transfer of information. On the following day, on June 2nd, we were made aware that we would be required to do a further investigation. We took the system back offline to contain the event. And as I noted, it was later in the day, Saturday evening on June 3rd, that we had a high degree of confidence that, yes, this event had led to a breach. And that's when our work pivoted to identifying Nova Scotians that had been impacted, the extent of this breach, and the severity of this breach.
And do you have a follow-up, Tim?
Yeah, that didn't quite answer the question, but I'll move on. I think that the switch to the MOVEit system at Nova Scotia Health happened before your government was elected. But I'm wondering if you can tell me why that switch was made from the old SIND system to MOVEit. Was it reflective of a desire to take the IT component outside of government and privatize it? Why was that change made?
So what I'll do, I'll pass that over to Deputy Clarke and explain perhaps a little bit more in depth of how government engages with external partners to support the delivery of programs and services for Nova Scotians.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for the question. No, that was not as a result of privatization of those services. send service at that time, again, I think I have to think about the timeline and whether I was in this chair or not, was an aged and legacy piece of technology. The MOVEit system and software is actually world-class, or in the top of the software solutions that provide this functionality. I know the irony of that statement today. And so the decision at that time was to improve upon that. Legacy technology, for those that might not understand that, is really just about old pieces of technology that don't get updates, these critical updates that the minister talked about, which are really important. So this was not about privatization.
Thank you, Deputy. Next, we are moving on to Evan Taylor with the Acadia Broadcasting.
Thanks, Minister. I guess my question is if you could kind of just walk me through the timeline of when the patch was implemented and why it sort of failed to take place. I've seen reporting out of BC the government there have used the service, and they say they patched it and were able to continue to use the service. So I'm wondering if you could perhaps provide some insight on why Nova Scotia's patch wasn't as successful, and perhaps why this data was still then able to be breached.
Yeah, thank you, Evan. I think I'm going to get Deputy Clarke to answer that, and perhaps he'll actually be able to dovetail on the unanswered part of Tim's question with respect to the timeline of perhaps the theft of this information.
Thank you, Minister. And yes, I appreciate the opportunity to provide that clarification. Our patching worked as well as British Columbia's did, as you indicated. So our records, our investigation showed that the stolen data that took place the 2 days prior to us being notified that there was a vulnerability. So once we put the patching in place, there was no more nefarious activity that we were able to see as a part of our investigation, as well as our expert partners that we also brought in to provide that additional validation on our already expert analysis.
And do you have a follow-up, Evan? Okay, hearing nothing, that does bring our press conference to an end today. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Before we go, can we just get the deputy, the 2 days prior, we're talking the 30th and 31st, or the 31st and the 1st? Sorry, you're muted.
I thought I clicked it off, the 30th and the 31st.
And just to be clear, Minister or Deputy, the 100,000, as far as you know at this point, does not include any information that would have been supplied by the public, correct?
That our investigation at this point in time, you are correct. As the ministers indicated, that investigation is ongoing. I think the approach we're taking here is not letting perfect be the enemy of good. What's important is we want to be confident, come out with good information, and be as transparent to Nova Scotians, knowing that we don't have all of the answers.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes today's announcement.